right before Ma'ariv, we talked about the plague of darkness. That might have not have been a plague of darkness. It might have been a brilliant light, and that brilliant light was dark to the Egyptian. For dark to the Egyptians, that's why it says for the Jews there was light. It doesn't say for the Jews there was no darkness. We explained that light and darkness could be alternate, parallel universes, and that's why Hashem said to Moshe, go to Paro because I've hardened his heart, because actually the hardening heart, which at dark time will also speak about a great light that's right behind it as well. That's one thing we talked about. Jumping around a little bit, this week's parsha also has the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people, and that is what?
Rosh Chodesh.
Chodesh, right? Very good. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the ability to declare when the new moon is. So everyone's familiar with the Rashi in the beginning of Bereshis. Bereshis bar Elokim, the beginning Hashem created heaven and the earth. Rashi asks, that doesn't seem to be the right place to start. I mean, that's great for history books, but in terms of the Jews and the Torah, it should give us the mitzvahs. And the first mitzvah is Chodesh Elohim. Hashem pointed to the moon and instructed to Moshe and Aaron what the moon would look like in its new position, and that was the first mitzvah, and that's how the Torah should begin. The Torah should begin with the Chodesh Elohim. That's the question that Rashi asks. We leave alone the answer for now. But we do have to figure out exactly, what is so significant about the mitzvah of Chodesh that it should have been first, and in the Torah itself, in Bereshis, and why, in fact, that the Torah does introduce this mitzvah first to the Bnei Yisrael. Also, it's interesting that we find Chodesh is associated with free will. All the Yom Tovim, which are directly impacted by the first of the month, because all the Yom Tovim are decided based on when the new moon is. So 15 days later is Sukkot, 15 days later is Pesach, 10 days later is Yom Kippur, etc., etc. We find Ata b'chartonim mikol amim, you chose us amongst all the nations. We've seen a few places actually the word bechira associated with Chodesh. I don't want to just make that connection. So the truth is, it should strike us as not coincidental, but an incredible irony that the Bereshis of the Torah is the beginning of the world being created, and then you also have a beginning called the beginning of the new moon. And so I guess there are two beginnings. There's the beginning of Bereshis, the beginning of Chodesh Elohim, and Rashi says we should start with the beginning of Chodesh, not the beginning of Bereshis. So what's going on? The Bereshis bar Elokim, the beginning of Hashem creating a world. The physical world is a world that's fairly predictable. To the extent that in the world of physics and everything physical, everything operates based on cause and effect. There's a system, the system kind of locked in, and we could almost fairly predict accurately what the next step will be based on its previous step. Because everything, in fact, and we tend to refer to laws of nature in Hebrew as not laws of nature, but chukei hateva. Chok is a law that is etched. It's etched in stone. Chakuk means something etched in stone. Laws of nature are immutable. They are what they are, and that's the given. We can't move off of them. And based on the fact that they're predictable what they are, we know what the next step will be as well. And that's the world, the physical world, Bereshit Bar Elokim. But there's another world that begins with Chodesh. And that was the world that was given to the Jews. And that is, in the world of Bereshis, like I said, you're stuck within that world. And in that world, you don't necessarily see free will. The person could say, even Paro, when he says, it says that Paro's heart was hardened. What it also means, leaving all the other commentaries about it off of that, leave all those commentaries out rather, but it also means that sometimes a person says, sorry, it's not within my nature. I can't do it. It's not within my capacity. I can't do it. It's not my nature. It's not my nature. It's not my nature is true and not true. In the world of nature, a person could say it's not my nature, but it's a little bit of a cop out because in the world of free will, a person could rise above his nature. Somebody could be naturally has a hot temper, but he can rise above that. Somebody is naturally speaking more of a lazy individual. He can rise above that. So in the world of nature, we're inclined to say, it's not my fault. I can't help myself. I couldn't help it. And that's the world of Paro, who says, that's it. I'm stuck. This is who I am. The world of Chodesh says, the word Chodesh comes with Chiddush. Chiddush means something new, which means that even though we were going in a cycle of an old moon, guess what? Fresh start. We're pressing the restart button. And what happened yesterday doesn't mean it has to happen today. Now is a new moon. Now I declare the new moon is. And in our own personal lives as well, we should subscribe to Chodesh. And that's why Hashem said, I'm giving you, the Jewish people, Chodesh Elechem, because our attitude has to be, we have to subscribe to the concept of Chodesh, which is that we can constantly reinvent ourselves. We don't have to be stuck on who we were the day before and the day before. And we're not stuck. We're not stuck, rather, like we are in the physical world. We're kind of stuck in that world of physics. But in the world of Ruchni, the world of spirituality, which Hashem gave us through Chodesh, Hashem is telling us there is Bechira. Ata Bechartanu, associated with Bechira by Yom Tovim, is because the world of Chodesh gave us Bechira, so to speak. It's that world of Chidush, of newness, that says yesterday doesn't have to beget today. Today I can start something new. I can reinvent myself and come new. That's the first message. That's why it was the first message to these people. Why it's so important. Because it tells us that we're not locked in. People think they're locked into a lifestyle, they're locked into their personality, they're locked in, whatever the case is. The Mitzvah thought that they were locked into a faith system, right? Whatever you think you're locked into, that's the world of Bereshis Bar Lukim. But that's not the system of Chodesh. And Hashem is giving us a system of Chodesh that we're not locked in. Jews are never locked in. As a people, we can break out of what, even the laws of natural history, which may lock in the world, doesn't lock in the Jew. We don't have to succumb to the laws of natural history. We somehow defy the laws of natural history. That comes from the idea of Chodesh, that we're not locked in. That's the importance, the paramount importance of Chodesh. And in fact, the Sfas Emes points out, the world was created in 10 utterances. Right? Hashem created the world, let there be light, and let there be a firmament, etc., etc. There were also 10 commandments, and there are also 10 plagues. And the Sfas Emes says like this: there's a world of 10 utterances. That's the physical world. There's a world that defies that physical world. That's the world of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the world about 10 commandments, where Kadosh Baruch Hu says we can rise above the laws of nature. What made that switch from the laws of Bereshis and the laws of the 10 utterances that create a world, the 10 makkos were there as lessons to the Jewish people, to get into our heads that we can rise above the laws of the 10 utterances, which are laws of nature, and we can transition now to the world of the 10 commandments, which takes us to a supernatural world. It's not a natural world. All right? So we go from Asar Mamoros, 10 utterances in the physical world, to Aseres Adibros, which is the spiritual world. But the bridge was a 10 makos that knocked it into our heads, that says there's a world that controls the 10 dibros. You're not locked. Look, every miracle shows we're not locked in. You're not locked into the world of nature. That's what it says. So, in fact, I think it's a medrash. Or I don't. The Bo El Par, the word Bo, the letter Bay stands for Bereshis, and the letter Aleph stands for Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Now it makes sense, because these final plagues are going to teach us the lesson of getting from Bereshis to Anochi, to be able to travel from the world of Bereshis, the world of beginning and physicality, to the world of Anochi, Hashem Elokecha, which is the world that Hashem introduced us in the world of Torah, which defies nature and is above nature. That's the bow, from Bereshis to Anochi, the transition from the 10 utterances to the 10 commandments, but the bridge is a 10 makos that emphasize that point. Okay. Let's talk about Makas Bechoros for a few moments. Makas Bechoros. So, this is the first time that the Torah introduces us to a concept called Jewish time. Now, I don't just mean the idea of Chodesh we just talked about, but there's another concept of Jewish time. So, we know Jewish time, I've talked about this many times, is cyclical rather than linear, and that rather than, a line where you hit to 2017, you can't go back to 2016. Jewish time is cyclical, and that you're kind of reliving as you go, kind of like visualize a spiral staircase. You're constantly reliving and going through a certain dimension in time. You're passing through that dimension, a second revolution. Every year is another revolution. Fine. That's a deeper concept, which we're not getting into now. But there's another concept called Jewish time, when we say, class 7 o'clock, and we all know it means 7-ish, right? That's the real Jewish time. 7-ish is Jewish time. The first time we're introduced to the concept of this Jewish time is this expression. Why? Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Bachatzot halayla, at precisely midnight, firstborns are going to start dying. And when Moshe goes to Paro, he says, kachatzot, not bachatzot, which means at precisely, but he changed the base to a chaf. He says at about 12 o'clock, 12-ish is when the Egyptian firstborn start dying. So Moshe Rabbeinu introduced us to the world of Jewish time, 12-ish. And obviously, Midrash and Rashi wants to know what happened over here. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu speak about 12-ish as opposed to precisely 12? Everybody knows, Rashi tells us, that Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned that if Paro's clocks were off a little bit, and his clock, it struck midnight, nothing happened, and it starts, the Egyptians start dying 12:03 on his watch, so he'll say, oh, you see, your God, all talk. He said he could do everything, he can't do everything. He said he'd deliver at 12 o'clock, didn't happen at 12 o'clock. So in order for Moshe Rabbeinu to avoid that, he said 12-ish, if he covered his bases, so therefore Paro couldn't point and say, you see? Okay, that's the Rashi. And obviously, it kind of brings a smile to your face when you hear it, because it sounds a little childish. It doesn't make much sense, actually, because Paro's he's not an idiot, right? He's wicked, but he's not an idiot. And Moshe Rabbeinu delivered like clockwork every single plague. Blood is blood. Frogs, lice. You name it, everyone happened exactly like Moshe Rabbeinu said it. All of a sudden, Makas Choshech, Moshe Rabbeinu says 12 o'clock, and it only happens 12:02. Paro says, you see, your God, nothing to talk about. They all start dropping like flies at 12:02. Obviously, he could deliver. It's kind of silly that Paro would point and say, you see, your God can't pull it off. Maybe he did pull it off. Maybe you got the clock wrong, right? Doesn't make sense. So there are two answers, really. But the second answer is really an extension and a deeper appreciation of the first answer. The first answer is that it's true. At 12:03, Paro would have to recalibrate and realize he messed up, and God did pull it off. But there were those 3 minutes that there was a Chil Hashem. There was a decimation of God's name. For those 3 minutes, the Egyptians said, you see, God can't pull it off. So Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to avoid the Chil Hashem for those 3 minutes. Okay. But let's take that a step further. What it's really saying is much deeper than that. He's not trying to avoid just 3 minutes, but the effect of those 3 minutes. Meaning, when we arrive at a certain conclusion, and that becomes what we assume is correct, it's very, very hard to push away from that conclusion. It's very hard to really dispel that in your own mind. In other words, I give you an example. Let's say the paper, the Washington Post, prints an article about such a person, a politician. This guy was dirty. He stole $100,000 from the campaign thing. All right, and they bury him on that first page. Next day they realize it wasn't him at all. Not him. It was his associate. It had nothing to do with it. So they print the retraction. Now let's assume even that they don't print the retraction on page A28 and they bury it in the back. They put it on the front page. Mistake, wrong guy. You know what? Too late. Damage is still done. People somehow will still feel, okay, he's in it, but with this smoke, there's fire. There's something going on, right? They'll always remain with a slight taint. Because once you cut that impression or you create that impression, it's really hard to move off that impression. And so Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned, for the first 3 minutes, Paro would say, see, your God, he's a God. I also have gods. But don't say your God is all-powerful, because he wasn't able to really get what he wanted done at precisely 12 o'clock. Now, even at 12:03, that notion becomes dispelled, but somehow still in his head, or the Egyptians in the whole, in their head, their God is not entirely all-powerful. He couldn't exactly pull it off, even though he did, but they already came to that conclusion 3 minutes earlier, and it's really hard to shake that notion fully. That's the way the human beings are. We have, especially first impressions, very hard to, right? You really get a second chance to make that first impression. That first impression sticks with you. And so Moshe was concerned that first impression will leave a mark, so that even if logically speaking, they know they were wrong, but somehow, some way, they would feel something that this God's not totally all-powerful, because that 3 minute gap, that even though they explained later on, somehow still lingers in the back of their minds. And that's really also, again, a powerful lesson for us. We know there's a mitzvah called Dan L'Kafschot, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Especially when you meet somebody for the first time. You really have to learn how to reserve judgment. You might say, listen, it looks like he came late. He's lazy. And you say to yourself, I don't know him well. It looks like he's lazy. But if I see otherwise later on, I'll recalibrate my judgment. It doesn't really work that way. Because once you create that judgment in your head that he's lazy, that it's really difficult. Almost anything he does afterwards, you're going to reinterpret or interpret through the filter of he's lazy. That's why this. That's why that. It's really hard to move off that first step. So Hashem says, give people benefit of the doubt. When you don't know who they are, at least Pirkei Avos says, give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if you don't know who they are, reserve judgment. Don't judge right away, because once you arrive at a conclusion, it's going to be very hard later on to clean that up. And so, reserve judgment. Give him the benefit of the doubt, and then you'll see over a period of time what kind of patterns he has and hasn't developed. But if you make that jump and the conclusion right away, you're doing yourself and him a disservice, because even though you'll think later on, okay, if I'm wrong, I'll just redo it, I'll recalculate. But it doesn't always quite work that way, because that's the way the mind is, and there's a trace, it still stays in the back end, and it comes up in the forms of filter as well. Okay, that's Bachatzos and Kachatzos. Also in this parsha, when Moshe Rabbeinu and Paro are negotiating, who's going to go, mi v'mi holchem. At one point, Paro was willing to listen to send some people out. So Moshe Rabbeinu wants to take everybody, and Paro says, no, you want to take the Giborim. You want to take the Giborim, the strong ones. Gibor means the people in prime of life, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. B'nureinu u'b'zkenenu nelech. We're going to go with our young and with our old. Not just those in the prime of life, but our young and our old. Now, there's two ways to understand this little negotiation. On one hand, Paro is legitimately saying, listen, you want Gibor. Now, who's a Gibor? Who's a strong person? Ezo Gibor, HaKovish Yisro. Who's the Gibor? The one who's able to conquer his evil inclination. If you want to go out and serve God in the desert, you want those people that are spiritually strong. That's what you want. But not the youth that are impetuous, not the elders, right, who don't have the vigor anymore. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. We as a people value the struggle itself. Not just those who are Giborim, that they've conquered the Yetzer already, but we want those people that still vacillate between the youthful exuberance and maybe the hesitancy of old age, and those people are constantly doing that battle. We value that as well. We value as well. We don't just value those that have conquered. We value the struggle that's represented in B'nai Kenem. That's one idea. Number two, B'nai Kenem also means, it's kind of extension of this, that we value the energy of youth and sometimes the more hesitant, more deliberate manner of the older ones. In other words, B'nai Kenem Nelech means Moshe Rabbeinu was expressing the fact that there has to be a balance between Nureinu Kenenu. There's something important about an exuberance, and you jump into something. It's important. And the Jews said, when the prophet said rather, when Bnei Yisrael went into the desert, right away, the prophet said, Lechtach zacharti loch koyamar Hashem. This is what Hashem says, Zacharti loch chesed nu'u rayach. I remembered the chesed of your youth, Lechtach achar midbar, that you went after me in the desert. So Hashem describes this chesed, that the Bnei Yisrael went into the desert, not knowing what to expect, as a ma'aseh nairis. That's something a youthful person will do. He's less cautious, throws caution to the wind sometimes. Let's do it. And they jump right in. And Bnei Yisrael didn't have all the answers of how we're going to travel in the desert, how we're going to manage, but they knew they had to do it. They showed that youthful exuberance. That's the chesed nu rayach. On the other hand, it's important to have sometimes deliberateness too. You can't just jump into things. You have to think things through. And Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, we value both the Nurayach and the Zkenenu. And the third understanding of Zkenenu is the following. Again, Paro was saying, if you want to take out the Jews for this spiritual retreat, so to speak, and you want to have an experience, a religious experience, you want the Gebarim, you want those people in the prime of life, because that's who you are. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, you don't understand. The Jewish people are the Jewish people because of two things. A, we value our Zakanim, we value our older people, we respect the values of the older people, and we see them as a link in the chain. We understand that without valuing their values that they got from their parents, we're done. And at the same time, you also put a tremendous premium on making sure the future, the next generation gets as well. We are a nation that focuses on Skinenu. We focus on our elders. We respect our elders because we understand that they represent the link in the chain. They're our legacy. We live in a society today that's not the case. You know, just the opposite. Even the elders run away from their being elders. They try to be as youthful as possible, right? There's no respect for being elder. You have to stay young. You have to look young, right? But we value, there's something special about sickness. That Moshe Rabbeinu said we value Ziknenu. And at the same time, we also value putting and investing in our future of B'nai Reinu. B'nai Reinu is Kanenu Nelech, means that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying that the Jewish people will only succeed if we always go with our elders and with our youth. If we travel with both of them, if we only travel with an eye towards our sickness, we try an eye towards the past and also an eye towards the future. We have to have both. We have to be connected to our past and also focus on the future. But Nereinu was Kanei Neluch. That's where our success is going to be. And Paro, in the cities where he understood that, he wanted to rob them. He said, go with the prime people in prime of life. Because he was trying to really destroy the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu said, no. We know how we're going to succeed. We're going to survive only because we have an emphasis and a value on the past and the Masorah, the transmission of the tradition from the past, as well as the idea we put our emphasis on our children and the future as well. But Nereinu is Kanenu Nelech. We have to value both. I'm going to say at my son's wedding, it was a couple of weeks ago, I had spoken to somebody and I told him an interesting thing. You know, I don't know if you know, it's based on Kabbalah, that under the chuppah, all the parents, grandparents, great-parents, all the neshamas of the previous generations come to the chuppah. It's really, it's a moment that's really awesome. The chuppah is an awesome moment, and all the babbas and zaydis, all the grandparents and great-grandparents, all the neshamas are coming to join this simcha. That's well known. What's not as well known, and I saw this in the Zohar, is that all the future generations are there as well. That's really awesome. That you look at the totality of the Jewish people, this young couple, who they are is their past and their future. And all the older generation, all the neshamas are there, and all the future generations are present at the chuppah as well. And that's b'nu'ureinu u'b'skenenu neil. It's precisely this at the same time. It's with our youth and our zikness we would travel. And this young couple has to know that lesson. That's the lesson behind Moshe Rabbeinu's conversation, if you will, with Paro. Let's see if there's any one more thing I want to say. 1 second. There's one more thing I want to say about the... 1 second. The truth is that the next piece, when Bnei Yisrael will leave Mitzrayim, so there's discussion over here about the matzah. We'll see, teichel matzahs. Right. So there's two things. There's a mitzvah of matzah that preceded their leaving Mitzrayim. Because people seem to think that we eat the matzah, dafka was left in a hurry. The mitzvah of matzah was given even prior to that act. And some explain that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually choreographed the events that way, knowing full well. Because he gave them the mitzvah, understanding that Bnei Yisrael will leave in a hurry. So I just want to mention that one point of leaving in a hurry and a matzah. So, you know, it's kind of a strange thing. So we eat matzah on Pesach to remind us that the Jews left in a hurry. You know, they also left probably wearing sandals, and do we wear sandals on Pesach because they wear sandals? And they also probably, ate with wooden spoons. We don't eat, right? Why is it? Because they left. Why is that important that they left in a hurry? What is that supposed to represent? And again, it really goes back to what we said earlier. Leaving in a hurry doesn't mean they simply left quickly. By the way, my theory has always been that, Bnei Yisrael left after 210 years. My theory was that really they were ready to go after about 10 years. But all the packing, until the wives got all their acts together, got all that packing. It was 200 years of packing. That's what I really think it was. It was a lot of packing, right? But some of they left in a hurry. They left in a hurry. How did they leave? What does it mean they left in a hurry? There was a lot of stuff they took with them. It doesn't mean they ran out. left in a hurry, you're supposed to convey the idea that they were not bound by the constraints of time. In other words, matzah itself, matzah represents a bread that doesn't go through a process. Bread is a process. You put yeast in it, you give it a chance, you give it time. And by the way, every process has to take place under the canopy of time. By definition, a process needs time to allow the process to take place. Right? Matzah means no process. There's no process because there's no time element. Leaving in a hurry doesn't just mean they left in a hurry. It means that there was no time-bound restriction of time. In other words, the idea of leaving in a hurry is supposed to convey that we were not bound by time. And the reason for that is because when we left Egypt, we were created as a Jewish people. We became created. We were created as Jewish people. Now, creation by definition means no time. When Hashem created the world, there was no passage of time. After the first creation was ex nihilo. After that, everything came from that first point. So that's a process that took place over time. But that first moment was before time. Because time is relative to mass. Right? Einstein said, right? Time is relative to mass. There's no mass, there's no time. So when Hashem created that first, whatever he created that first thing, there was no moment yet. The moment didn't exist till he created time. If the Jewish people are a creation, that's what we are. We're not just an evolution of peoples, but Hashem created this holy nation. If we're a creation, it couldn't be under the canopy of time. It had to also be transcend time. So that's all symbolized by the fact we left in a hurry. There was no process. And that's why it says, Hashem said, I took you out of Mitzrayim, ani v'lo malach. Without a malach. What does that mean without? Because a malach also is a system of a process. If it went by Hashem himself without a malach, it means there was no process, there was no time. It's underlying the idea that the Jewish people are an entity that was created when we left Mitzrayim. It's an entity whose whole is greater than some of its parts. It's an entity. And that entity, like any creation, can't be under time. It wasn't a process. We went from the 49th level of impurity to 49th level of purity in one moment. Normally, it's a process. If you want to, in fact, that's what Sphira is. Sphira is the process of working our way back from the lowest level to the highest level. That's what Sphira is, those 49 days. But on the night we left Mitzrayim, we went from the lowest to the highest level. That's not a process. That's a creation.
So instead of in a hurry, it should be in an instant.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's supposed to really. It's the exactly. The word hurry conveys the wrong idea.
But
it's the instant.
There was a
Very
process
good.
of
We'll
preparing
stop
them.
What?
There was a long process of preparing them to be ready to.
Correct. But the moment they left was a moment. That's right. But they went from the 49th level of impurity, that moment where they became nothing into a nation. That was a moment. That was
And
instant.
it had to be instant because otherwise they would have been afraid to leave anyway.
That's also what I'm saying. But in metaphysically speaking, if we were created as a nation, it had to take place in the instant.
Could I just review quickly, because I didn't pick up on this entirely, the idea of hardening Pharaoh's heart. Now it could.
Did we talk? I think we talked about it last week. Did we talk about it last week? I think so.
This more earlier today.
But I think last week, did we spend time on it? I thought we did last week. I don't remember.
One obvious interpretation could be that God took away his free will.
Correct. Yeah, I think we talked. I think we
And
said
he
that
couldn't
last
be accountable because he wasn't willing to let him go.
Well, not a God. He forfeited his free will. It wasn't a God. He forfeited. He conducted himself the way Hashem said, you don't deserve any free will anymore. Free will is a privilege. You forfeited it, and now I'm just going to use you as a tool to get what I need to get done.
And this is a human character, because when we repeat the same behavior over and over again, eventually we do lose our free will. We can't do any. We're locked into a.
Well, that's what I'm saying. When Paul says I can't, and we're locked in. That word locked in is that what we're talking about, right? That hardening heart is that sometimes people experience. I'm locked in. Now the lesson is no, you're not. You have free will, but in Paro's world, he did it. Correct.
So your point earlier
Right.
that you don't
Yes.
have to stay the same way forever. You're
Right.
like Pharaoh.
Exactly. All right. To be continued.
Okay.